Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's first story takes us into one of those paper-thin apartment buildings where privacy is a myth and patience wears out fast. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My neighbor called the cops on me for quiet TV noise. Probably about 20 years ago, back when I was single, broke, and freshly on my own, I lived in this cheap apartment complex that was clearly constructed out of hopes, dreams, and maybe a thin layer of drywall. The soundproofing was so bad you could hear someone sneeze 2 units over if the conditions were right. My particular slice of hell came in the form of the old lady who shared a wall with my bedroom. From day one, she was a problem. Anytime I did anything in my room, watching a movie, playing a game, streaming a show, she would bang on the wall or come knocking at my door to complain. And I'm not talking about blasting music or having friends over. I kept my volume absurdly low, like volume set to 7 out of 100 low. The kind of low where you're leaning forward trying to hear dialogue and reading subtitles just in case. Didn't matter. If there was sound, she was offended by it. Meanwhile, she had 2 Pomeranian dogs, and these weren't the quiet, sleepy kind. These were the kind that yapped at everything. Footsteps in the hallway, a door opening 3 floors down, someone coughing, wind, existence. They barked constantly, and she either couldn't hear it or didn't care. At the time, I'd just been switched to night shifts at work to fill in while they were hiring someone new. It wasn't permanent, but it was going to be a few months at least. To adjust, I started conditioning myself to stay up at night and sleep during the day, which of course made things worse. Now I was awake when her dogs were yapping and asleep when she was vacuuming at noon. The breaking point came when the police knocked on my door for the 4th time. 4th! Same routine every time. I'd answer the door, half asleep or half annoyed, and the cops would awkwardly explain they'd received a noise complaint. They'd step inside, listen for about 30 seconds, and then give me that look, the one that says, "We're only here because we had to be." They'd admit the volume was fine, ask me politely to keep it down anyway, and leave. You could tell they were getting just as sick of it as I was. After the 4th visit, one of my coworkers, who had a very creative streak, gave me an idea. "Man," he said, "you ever heard of a high-frequency dog whistle?" I hadn't seriously considered it before, but once the seed was planted, it grew fast. The next day, I bought one. That night, when everything was quiet and I knew she was asleep, I gave it a quick blast. Instantly, her dogs went absolutely berserk, yapping, scrambling, barking like the world was ending. I waited. As soon as they quieted down, another blast. Same result. I didn't overdo it all at once. I was methodical. A few times a night, every night for a week, sometimes more on my days off when I had the energy to really commit to the bit. Always just enough to set the dogs off, never long enough for her to pinpoint anything specific. From her perspective, her dogs had suddenly turned into unmanageable demons for no apparent reason. And here's the best part. I wasn't technically making any noise. Soon enough, the neighbors started complaining, not about me, but about her dogs. Constant barking all hours of the night. People who worked mornings, people with kids, people who didn't care why the dogs were barking, just that they were. The apartment manager got involved. She was given an ultimatum. Get rid of the dogs or be evicted. She chose to move out. Peace at last. The new tenants who moved in next door were a newly married couple, super chill, normal people. One night, not long after they moved in, I was gaming in my room when I heard muffled arguing through the wall. Nothing crazy, just his wife chewing him out because they were out of toilet paper and he forgot to buy some. I laughed, grabbed a few rolls, walked over, and knocked on their door. She was mortified. He thought it was hilarious that I'd heard everything and came to rescue him. That moment broke the ice, and we ended up becoming good friends, like long-term friends, dinners, holidays, the whole deal. Looking back, I probably could have handled the old lady situation in a more mature way, but honestly, after 4 unnecessary police visits and weeks of tiptoeing around my own apartment, I don't feel bad at all. Sometimes karma just needs a little ultrasonic encouragement. Was it mature? Probably not. Was it effective? Absolutely. Sometimes the proper channels just loop endlessly until someone loses their mind. You tried being considerate, you tried turning things down, you dealt with police visits, and none of it changed your behavior.
And our next story. Revenge on the low-life landlord who first deprived us of heat and later kept our security deposit. I was a kid back in the 80s, 2 years out of college, when I moved into an apartment by the shore in New Jersey. When the cold weather arrived, there was always a few days when the apartment was cold and we'd tell the super, then the heat would start arriving. One year, the heat started decreasing in February, and inside the apartment it was like in the 50s. We had to start wearing coats. We told the super about it and nothing happened this time. We wrote the landlord about it, still nothing. So we checked with an attorney and learned about warranty of habitability and withholding of rents. So yet another certified letter went to the landlord and we started withholding rents. He files a motion to evict and we answer with the Marini defense, depositing the withheld monies with the court. The judge finds in our favor for all the money we withheld, and we continue to live there because there just aren't that many options as we save for a home. Flash forward to living there for 6 years. On the last lease, because we are about to buy a home, we write in a clause that we can break the lease within 45 days' notice in writing, similar to his 45-day clause. They don't notice it because it's slightly obscured on the top left of page 2, so they sign off on it and return it to me. So in the middle of the lease, we give the 45-day written notice, make the rent payments, and leave. They don't return our deposit, so we sue for it, demanding double. They sue us for the remainderment of the 6 months' rent and refuse to return our security deposit. This is no longer small claims court, but we proceed without an attorney anyway. They're expensive. We arrive at the courthouse, and the court forces a round of arbitration. The arbitrator says we will lose in front of the judge, and to pay the rent remainderments, we refuse and wait for the judge. While waiting, the landlord's attorney drops by and asks why we didn't take the arbitrator's advice, and we tell him about the clause we wrote in, and he states he saw it too, and since it was crossed out, it's not part of the deal. We show him our copy of the lease where it's not crossed out, and his face goes white as a sheet. He makes a call to the landlord, who then offers to properly break the lease with no penalty and return our security deposit in full. We refuse, and show him the certified letter stating that we would have accepted the deal up until yesterday, but that if you force us to come down to court, we want double damages of the improper withholding of the security deposit. He tries again to reach out to the landlord, but no luck this time. We go to see the judge. He looks at both leases and calls their attorney to the bench. The judge takes our lease and thrusts it towards their attorney and says, "This is the lease in force." Their attorney starts walking around the courtroom like a chicken with its head cut off, while I try to laugh as quietly as possible. The judge fines for us for double damages. We receive nothing for a week. I go back to the courthouse where the clerk says they should pay that judgment immediately and tells us about chattel execution and gives us that form. A couple of weeks pass and a check appears from the landlord. Another month passes and we get a call from the court. They have our money. I told them the landlord had sent a check a while back, so it's all good. She tells us that we should have informed the court that we got the money to stop the chattel execution from occurring. The court sent the sheriff to their offices and confiscated office equipment and sold it at auction to satisfy the judgment. They said, "Don't worry, they'll just return the money to the landlord." That's the revenge. Getting the money and having them experience the abrupt seizing of their assets at their place of business, having it sold at auction, and then having the money returned to them. Major pro-justice.
The ending isn't satisfying in a flashy way, but it's deeply unsettling in a "this is what accountability actually looks like" way. And our next story. His harassment cost him his $30,000 car, his job, and 8 to 12 years of his freedom. About 14 years ago, I was trying to sell a used car while juggling college classes, a weird schedule, and just enough exhaustion to make everything mildly irritating by default. The car wasn't a gem. The check engine light was on, the AC needed recharging, and something in the fuel system, probably the fuel pump, was on its way out. I wasn't hiding any of that. I priced it accordingly and listed it for $1,000 on a local, well-known sales site I'd used before without problems. Because my schedule was a mess, swing shifts, late-night classes, and early mornings, I put one very clear note in the ad: "I work weird hours. Please text only. I may not be able to take phone calls." At the time, that seemed reasonable. I included photos that showed the peeling paint and the general wear. No surprises, no games. A few days later, I got a text. "Hi, I'm Matt. Is your car still for sale?" Matt isn't his real name, but close enough. I texted back that yes, it was still available. We went back and forth like normal adults at first. He asked about the engine light. I explained. He asked who quoted the repairs. I told him it was my regular mechanic and that the price was approximate. He asked about mileage, title, and whether the AC worked. All standard stuff. Then the tone shifted. The next day, completely out of nowhere, I got a text that read, "Are you going to take all your crap out of the car before you sell it to me, or is that my job?" I stared at my phone, genuinely confused. I hadn't agreed to sell him the car. He hadn't scheduled a viewing. He hadn't even confirmed a price. And the crap he was referring to? 3 college textbooks and a duffel bag with spare clothes. 4 items. That was it. I replied calmly, "I'm not selling the car to you, so you don't need to worry about it." That should have been the end of it. It absolutely was not. He immediately started texting back-to-back messages complaining about the peeling paint, which was visible in the photos, calling the car a piece of junk, telling me I was insane for asking $1,000, accusing me of wasting his time. I tried to disengage at first, explaining again that other people were interested and he wasn't getting the car. That's when it turned personal. The site I used allowed posts to link to Facebook. This was early in Facebook's reign, back when privacy settings were basically a suggestion, and most of us trusted the platform way more than we should have. My ad linked automatically, and I hadn't thought twice about it. Matt did. He found my Facebook. Suddenly, his texts weren't about the car anymore. They were about me, about my appearance, about how I should be ashamed for saying no to a muscular guy like him while I was a fat woman who should know her place. He sent a photo of himself to prove how built he was. He wasn't. He looked like a beanpole with a couple of faint ab lines and a lot of confidence he hadn't earned. Then came the misogyny. He asked if I even knew anything about cars, or if I'd made the post while I was on my period and didn't know what I was talking about. He told me I should feel lucky I was married because otherwise he'd come to my house and show me how a real man handles a little bee. I didn't respond. I was shaken, but I still thought blocking him would be enough. Then he crossed a line so far there was no coming back. I'd posted pictures on Facebook of my son. He was about 7 or 8 at the time, normal kid photos, zoo trips, smudged dirt on his face from playing outside. Matt started texting about those. The cleanest version of his messages said things like, "Your kid is just as ugly as you are, and that dirt on his face looks like you beat him." He implied my son would never grow up to find a wife. He mixed that with renewed rape threats toward me. I remember saying out loud, "Oh, hell no," without even realizing I'd spoken. At the time, I worked as a school crossing guard to keep a flexible schedule while in college. This particular job was hired and supervised through the local police department. Every couple of weeks, we had to go into the station to sign our time cards. That day, I was sitting in the lobby, waiting my turn, scrolling through the messages I'd missed while my phone was off in class. My boss noticed my face and walked straight over. "What's wrong?" she asked. I told her everything. I showed her the texts. I told her I was about to delete them and block the number. She stopped me immediately. "No," she said, "don't delete anything. Let me see your phone." She read every message. Her jaw tightened. She told me to wait until the lobby cleared, then asked me to follow her behind the security doors. I trusted her, so I did. She sat at her desk, typing, occasionally glancing at my phone. "All I need is what you have," she said. "Did he give you a name?" I scrolled back to the first message. "Hi, I'm Matt." She nodded and kept typing. It took a while, long enough to feel uncomfortable. Then she handed me my phone back. She told me not to respond to him anymore, not to delete anything. If he escalated, I was to call her directly or dial 911. Only later did I learn that my boss wasn't just an administrator, she was a lieutenant. She'd come up through patrol and had spent years investigating child, elder, and disabled abuse cases. Threats involving kids were not something she took lightly. 2 weeks later, when I went back to sign my next time card, she asked me to wait again. "I need you to sign something," she said. It was an official complaint. After I signed it, she explained what had happened. The phone number he used was tied to multiple people. It was a cheap provider, but the name combined with the number was enough. She found his driver's license, his address, his history. He had 5 kids with 4 women. He was over 10 years behind on child support, tens of thousands of dollars behind. He'd recently transferred the title of a flashy, expensive car. Because of the arrears, she was able to issue a seizure order on the vehicle. One of the mothers lived in a state where fleeing child support carried an active warrant. That state wanted him picked up immediately. Digging further, she discovered he'd been using his brother's social security number at work to avoid garnishment. His employer was notified. He was fired for fraud. 4 days before I walked into that office, she'd personally executed the warrant for felony child abandonment. He was sitting in jail, waiting to be extradited, facing an 8 to 12-year sentence. I sold my car for full price a few days later. I never heard from him again. And every time I think about how close I came to just blocking him and deleting those messages, I get chills. All he had to do was accept no and walk away. Instead, he decided to threaten a woman and insult her child. Turns out that decision cost him everything. It's wild how this started over a $1,000 car and ended with felony charges, extradition, and jail. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.